Welcome to the channel. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Community Report 46 for Workers and Resources Soviet Republic. This was released on the 16th of March 2022, if you're watching this in the future. And this report contains an update for the upcoming water and sewage update, which should be due in the next few weeks. Now, this report consists of two parts. In the first part, the devs give an update with specific reference to the new water, and then the second part they give an update with some additional features that will be included in the update. Let's just move on, and what I'll do is I'll just read what the devs are saying in the report. It says, "Greetings, dear comrades of the Soviet Republic. Few more weeks of our lives has passed away since we published the last report. The Earth is still circling around the sun, and the sun is still shining even with all the events we've witnessed during the past weeks in the world. At least something is out of the power of men, and we do not need to worry about mistakes people can make in that regard. Our Earth is circling around the sun. We hope you are doing well and that you spent these days doing meaningful things, not only for yourselves but also for others, because we never know how much time we have left in our lives in which we may have a positive impact on the lives of others. We already know there is quite an impact of our work on many through this game, and we hope that you will not allow people who do not understand why this game is fun to destroy your enjoyment. We are not slowing down, and we are still working hard to get the next mission in the development process." And what we got here, I think, is a picture of a technical office. Yeah, I think these are the various water and sewage disposal trucks that are now going to be associated with the technical office, but we're not going to dwell too long because there's quite a lot to get through. So moving on to the next paragraph, our pre-internal testing of the upcoming update is going well, and we were able to fix some critical issues. This week we will offer the updated game to more testers to help us find more potential issues. Then maybe a week afterwards we'll be ready to release the game for public testing. So what is new and may be interesting for you to know? We added more vehicles which can be used to transport water and sewage. We also implemented the water in some industries. You will need water for food factory, distillery, chemical plant, fabric factory, concrete plant, nuclear fuel plant, etc. What I will say about the new update with respect to making this new update available for public testing, from a personal perspective, because I've got the Seven Crosses series, I may not jump in straight away. I might give it a few days just so that the devs can fix any kind of possible release bugs before I start taking a look at the new update. And then going forward, then we'll see what we can do. So moving on, it's important to mention that not all factories will require drinking water for production, but in those that need to distinguish between water used for production process and drinking water for the staff, the water used for production do not need to be so clean, and you will be able to bring it through separate pipelines. The same can be said about the sewage water from factories like chemical plant, which will have a separate tank for normal sanitary sewage and water polluted through the production process, because the water process will have a higher level of pollution. This means you do not need to bring that into the same sewage plant to purify it, but you can treat it separately. Many of you were curious if you could build or use a lake to dump the sewage water into that. It is possible to do so, but you will need to consider the pollution in the lake and the whole area near it, because currently there's no separate pollution for air and water in the game. If you will dump sewage water without any purification, the area there will be dumped will be highly polluted. That's interesting. And what we'll do is take a quick look at the picture. I think this gives an overview. What we got on the left hand side here is a concrete plant, 85 cubic meters of water. Wow, that's a lot of water. That could be interesting, especially as one of the key buildings you need when you first start out is actually a concrete plant. That's going to certainly change when you want to start, especially hard starts. You've actually got water storage here as well. It says 60 cubic meters. So you can't even really store the amount needed for a single day's production. This one up here is a single nuclear reactor. Now this one, quite interestingly, only needs 6.8 cubic meters of water. But you can see down here at the bottom, there is actually a sewage disposal tank, export 25 cubic meters of water. So, and that's actually green. Well, I'm not actually sure why that would be green. So there's a little bit of storage there, but I'm assuming that if you don't take the water away, then that pollution will spread, and it possibly could affect the health of your workers. Then we've got the distillery down here. This needs 13 cubic meters of water. And we got these icons here. It says input bar. I think the meter in the center here is consumption. Got absolutely no idea what the blue for the flask is. I don't know if that is the fact the tank filling up. And then this pipe with a kind of black circle in it is the sewage output as well. I think looking at this, my first impression is that installing water is going to, especially in a large industrial city, is going to get quite complicated. I'll be really interested to see whether such things as steel mills need water as well. So moving on, the factories will require water for production, will have new pipe connections to get the required water. Water distribution substations are meant to be used mainly to connect residential and public service facilities. This also means that if you want to continue your existing maps, you may run into problems, and you will need to rebuild some of your factories to get the required water and sewage connections properly. So bear that in mind if you want to continue your already developed republic, and take it as a challenge. Just do not turn on the new water difficulty level and continue without water and sewage. Now that paragraph is interesting for two reasons. One, it was like, for example, my Seven Crosses series, knocking down all the individual buildings and trying to rebuild them would be quite a challenge. It also opens up the question about modded versions, because it's implying that the water needs to be specifically added to buildings. It would be very interesting to see whether modded versions of, say, concrete plants, chemical plants, and that will actually need a water connection. And of course, there's another thing I just thought of, is that if we got to have dedicated pipe connections, and will we be able to get the pipe connections in, bearing in mind that I've already got, there's already infrastructure possibly underground. Moving on again, it says we've also added new function to technical service in the case of emergency, or if players decide to build the water distribution network and sewage network for some remote locations with few buildings. In these situations, technical services equipped with proper vehicles will be able to distribute drinking water and collect and transport sewage. The water distribution system requires a lot of pipes and pumps, which can be quite expensive in certain situations, especially if there is not that high demand for water and then the output of sewage is not high in those cases. It would be economical to use vehicles instead of pipes, and of course vehicles can bring the sewage into sewage plants to purify it before dumping it into nature. So I think the idea of these technical offices is when you're first starting and you've got a small community and you don't really want to put in a full piped infrastructure, but of course, that still poses the question with respect to, say, an early concrete plant if it's required. We'll just take a quick look at the picture. So this is a picture of the technical services there. I'd say that's the technical services over there. And I think as the first picture I looked at the start of this report, you can see the trucks all lined up in front of the technical services building. And you can see it says water and sewage management. So it's actually got water and sewage. And it says winter maintenance priority below. So it's all going to be mixed up. But my first inclination is to have if we're going to go for this option, would be to have dedicated technical services for just water, not mix it with the snow plows. So we'll just come out of there, we'll just move down and take another look at this picture. And I'm guessing the fact that there's water trucks in here, this is like a water pickup point. It'd be interesting to see whether the wells actually have truck pickup points in them as well. And then if we come down to this one, this is obviously a sewage drop-off point because you've got the pipe with the black circle, and you can see sewage unloading and unloading. And what this has done is been connected directly to an outfall there. So it looks very much like even if you go for the basic model, you're still going to need an outfall to get rid of this the foul water. So moving on to the last sections, and what I'll do this time is I'll read both paragraphs, then we'll come back and look at the pictures. Additionally, we changed the cursor to make it look better. We changed the color for white to allow better identification if it is above or underground. Besides that, we've made improvements to how roads are curved and connected. There will be new visuals to show angles and diameters, and this will help many of you to plan better. Another thing to mention is that there will be a new option to use grid snapping during the planning process. This means that you will be able to place infrastructure and buildings exactly according to a grid. Just going down to the final paragraph, You do not need to worry about the progress and development, even if we do something extra due to the current circumstances. We're still focusing on the upcoming update of the game, and we want you to get ready as soon as possible to get the next stage afterwards. There's still a lot to do, and we continue to push forward. This is our only way we can make this game even better than it is. We're all humans as much as you are, and we are not perfect. We do our best to produce something meaningful and have meaningful lives. Games are here for entertainment and sometimes some educational character too, but the most important is the players may have fun and be able to play with a sense of something better than reality, which is often cruel. We wish to enjoy fun, and not only while you play games, but also those who love you and you love. Stay tuned for the next report. Now, what the previous paragraph mentioned is that if you look into this picture here, you see here that what we've got is angles now, so you can actually possibly gauge a right angle when you're laying out track, which is going to be really useful from the respect, say, specifically for track laying. Now, the next one shows that it also applies to bridges. Again, it's going to be a very useful attribute to have, because one of the problems I've always had with bridges is trying to work out whether you're turning a right angle or something like that, and seeing a visual mark to say what that angle is. Even if, and of course a logical extension to this maybe in a future release would be to put the degrees on the graphic as well. And I think this one just, yeah, this one shows the way the pipes are, and what if that's down as well? That'd be quite interesting. Again, we just got one here which is kind of showing the right angle there. So in some ways it's kind of a bit of a planning process as well. You can see the turns, and then let's have a look at this. This one looks a little bit more complicated. So this one's kind of coming around there into this area here. Now, unfortunately, they don't show. Well, that's pretty fascinating. That is, I mean, that is almost an equilateral triangle, isn't it? Unfortunately, they don't show the new grid snapping, but if you're interested, Bilbo Joes did a live stream, I think it was over a week ago, where he took a first look at the update, and he actually demonstrates how to use the grid. And the way it works is that if you want to use the grid snapping, you press F1, turn the grid on, and then what happens is when your cursor moves over the squares, it will snap to one of the points on the square. So if you want to align buildings or get a really straight road, you just use that grid and the cursor will follow it. I'm assuming that possibly F4 may disable it if you just want the F1 to see the terrain and you don't want to snap the grid. Final conclusion, well, I have to admit this update is going to be a little bit more challenging than I thought it was going to be, especially with respect to fitting it into the Seven Crosses series, because of course I've got such a big economy. I think what I'm going to do is when this update hits the public branch, I might do a bit of experiments, but it may consist of doing an experiment and then rewinding and coming back, just looking at different features. I'll be very interested to see how mods are affected by this update and whether the modding community is going to have to rework certain key buildings. And there's a very real possibility that the next star after this update drops, we may be very restricted in some of our options with respect to water connectivity. So this is where I'm going to leave it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it interesting. Any comments, feedbacks, opinions, feel free to chuck it in the comment section of the video. But until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.